Thanks for joining us from the Ohio AgNet Voice You Know with the News You Trust studio, sponsored by Grain Equipment Company, where innovation meets execution. I'm Dale Menyo. Well, 2 or 3 days of frost and some afternoon sun, but I think we're a long way before we hit any fields. In the meantime, Ohio soybean farmers Grow Next Gen offers free STEM resources and links students to cutting-edge ag careers. Discover more at grownextgen.org. And also on Thursday this week, we'll get our first update on the Fight to Hunger Stock to Trailer program from Farm Credit Mid-America and Rural First. Again, we'll get that Thursday update, and we'll be in Cambridge. The sharp dip in U.S. tractor and combine sales continued in March, with total farm tractor sales down 13.6% last month compared to March of 2024. The number comes from the March 25 Ag Tractor and Combine Report, which is produced monthly by the Association of Equipment Manufacturers. Combine sales were down nearly 40% in March of 25 compared to the previous year. The all-tractor figure includes sales of two-wheel drive and four-wheel drive tractors. Sales of two-wheel drive tractors declined 13.5% in March compared again to a year ago. Within that group, sales of more ready farm tractors, 100 horsepower plus tractors, were down 18.6%. Sales of four-wheel drive units were down 19.7% in March. And for the first 3 months of the year, sales of all tractors are down 15.1%. Combine sales were also off sharply in March, according to the AEM report. Manufacturers reported 241 combine sales in March compared to 387 sold in March of last year. Year to year, that difference is down 37.7%. For the first 3 months of this year, combine sales are down 56.5% compared to the first 3 months of 2024. Today's weather brought to you by Seed Consultants. Simply better performance online at seedconsultants.com. Here's the forecast.
Still dealing with a little bit of moisture trying to linger over the eastern Corn Belt. I'm Chief Meteorologist Ryan Martin. Let's take a look at that Ohio Ag weather update. Decent cloud cover around through the day today. Now, there will be some sunshine peeking through at times, just not an exceptional amount. Later this afternoon into this evening, I can't rule out hit-and-miss scattered showers, mostly I-70 southward, but I think we're looking at totals a few tenths or less. We do see a drier push going into tomorrow, but that drier push does come with a trade-off, and it's cold air and cloud cover. So definitely chilly behind this frontal boundary that sags through later today, and we stay below normal on temperatures through Wednesday. Very chilly there. Better sunshine potential Wednesday. Getting into Thursday, we get on the backside of the circulation. Warm air starts to come in. Thursday looks pretty nice, all things considered. Moving into Friday, we have hit-and-miss scattered showers trying to work through the state, getting into northern Ohio first, then Friday night into Saturday. Southern Ohio gets into the game. 2-day totals are likely going to be anywhere from a quarter to 3/4 of an inch. Coverage 80% of the state. Most action is done by Saturday mid to late afternoon. We clear out for Easter Sunday with high pressure sitting right on top of us. It's going to be mild for Easter Sunday as well. We follow that up with a very active week next week. The week of the 21st has potential for rain off and on all week long. Honestly, I think there's a rain threat every day somewhere in Ohio. So while we see temperatures mild, we aren't going to be seeing a lot of drying just because there's new moisture trying to work through. I'm meteorologist Ryan Martin.
And thanks, Ryan. Let's check in with Tad Nicholson with the latest update on the difference between trade and tariffs. Joining me is Tad Nicholson from Ohio Corn and Wheat. And Tad, let's talk about trade. Are there some real discrepancies around the world that the tariffs might actually help us negotiate on the trade side, the big picture?
Well, there certainly is, Dale. And, number one, trade is so important to agriculture, and it's just part of our fiber. It's really what helps us. When 95% of the world population lives outside of the United States, you got to trade. We are blessed with an abundant supply, and we can ship it all over the world. It does bring up the issue. There are some times when we have some trade deficits, but also just not fair trade. And here's the prime example. Brazil ethanol comes into the United States at a 2% tariff. When we ship ethanol to Brazil, it's under an 18% tariff. Not fair at all, Dale, and it's one that we've been really upset about and wanting to have somebody, and it seems like this administration is ready to take on that and all the other trade discrepancies.
What proportion of our corn crop needs to go to the world market so that everything continues to deal with a market-on-market basis, not just an oversupply somewhere?
Typically, on year to year, we export about 15% of our corn crop. But as you know, we export about 50% of our soybean crop and 50% of our wheat crop. And so it's a big part of the farming system to get grain outside of the United States.
Are we just talking grain, or are we talking grain and byproducts? Ethanol, biodiesel, DDGs? Is it the whole can or just grain?
When we talk about corn, we talk about corn in all forms. And that means it could be meat. We could turn it into meat, export that. It could be DDGs, ethanol, corn, whatever. As long as it took corn to get there, then we want to promote that export. And it's very important to the entire system.
Dad, thanks for the update. In Thursday's WASDE report, USDA finally increased its estimate of corn exports by 100 million bushels, taking into 2.55 billion bushels. If you compare that to previous highs, the high set in 2020-21 ended with 2.74 billion bushels. In 21-22, it was close at 2.47 billion bushels, and fourth place was 07-08 at 2.437 billion bushels in exports. Another respectable U.S. weekly export sales report released Thursday backs up USDA's increased estimate with another 31 million bushels in sales. Total commitments are running 427 million bushels ahead of last year compared to the revised increase of 258 million bushels year over year. As far as South American estimates go, USDA left basically everything unchanged this month, including the 24-25 production number, exports, domestic use, and ending stocks in Thursday's report. That does nothing to provide importing countries with much of an alternative to the U.S. for supplies, at least until Brazil's second crop corn is available later this summer. It's well worth recalling the major exporters, Argentina, Brazil, Russia, South Africa, and Ukraine, have combined 24-25 export estimates 6 million metric tons below last year, 9 million metric tons below 22-23, and 10.6 million metric tons below the record levels set in 21-22. Regarding the elephant in the room, the escalating tariff war between the U.S. and China appears to be having little impact on corn. With China basically absent from the market in 24-25 anyway, the trade between the rest of the world remains the focus. On that front, the fact that China, being the number one customer of U.S. corn, was left out of the entire tariff situation has been a very positive sign regarding exports. With the 90-day pause announced Wednesday on reciprocal tariffs, the remaining American corn customers may be much more willing to keep purchases up. In fact, it is possible that negotiations within the 90-day pause may see an increase in export demand, with the calculation used to determine the reciprocal tariff rate being entirely trade deficit based. The best way for countries to satisfy the demands that is addressed immediately would be buy more American goods. The recent dramatic decline in the U.S. dollar index should only make U.S. corn more price competitive for international buyers, with it falling below 99.0 briefly on Thursday, even compared to the 109.6 on January 13th. It certainly helps encourage exports. And on a totally different subject, but still coming from President Donald Trump on Thursday, he suggested a new program will be set up to help legalize farm workers and reduce the risk of farmers losing undocumented workers to mass deportations. Now, he's creative thinking for this one. President Donald Trump on Thursday pitched a plan that would allow farms to certify undocumented workers with the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Under Trump's proposal, undocumented farm workers would return to their home countries and come back legally. Trump discussed easing restrictions around undocumented farm labor during a cabinet meeting Thursday. It was the first time the president had signaled a willingness to temper his mass deportation plans to help protect the labor pool for industries such as agriculture. Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem highlighted border security and deportations, noting thousands of people have self-deported back to their home countries in the past 2 months. Trump commented, "It's a very big self-deport that we're starting." President then said farmers and other businesses need workers, and undocumented workers will be given the chance to self-deport and return to the country legally, he said. That should be an incentive for people in the country illegally to identify themselves under the Alien Registration Act with U.S. Customs and Border Patrol. We're going to work with people so that they can go out in a nice way and come back to our country. We're going to work with them in the beginning and trying to get them back legally so that gives you a real incentive, Trump said. Back with more after this.
Every time you use biodiesel, you're fueling more than your engine. You're investing in Ohio's farmers, reducing emissions and creating cleaner air for all of us. Did you know biodiesel adds 13% in value to every bushel of soybeans grown? That's good for farms, good for families, and good for the future. Drive with purpose. Choose biodiesel. Learn how at soyohio.org.
Soybeans are a game changer for Ohio's pork industry. Pigs thrive on soybeans' perfect blend of protein and energy, helping hogs nationwide devour the equivalent of 292 million bushels of soybean meal annually. Ohio is number 7 in pork production, contributing to the billions of pounds of pork enjoyed by families across the nation each year. From sizzling bacon to barbecued ribs, soybeans power the farms that feed families. Brought to you by Ohio soybean farmers and their checkoff. Today's market analysis is brought to you by the Louis Dreyfus Company. Excited to be building the newest state-of-the-art soybean crush facility in Upper Sandusky, Ohio. For more soybean marketing information to LDC, call them at 574-566-2113. Here's Ryan Martin.
Grain markets finished the Friday session very, very strong. What's it going to do this week? No idea. Let's try and work through what was talked about late last week. The Board of Trade rally was led by wheat and chart-based buying of corn and soybeans. We did hear that China was in the marketplace this past week, or last week we should say, of 55 to 60 cargoes of Brazilian soybeans for the week. That is a big, big story. Now, the U.S. did sell 121,000 metric tons of beans, with the sales split between 55,000 for this crop year, 66,000 for the next crop year. EU is the rumored buyer. EU and non-Chinese Southeast Asian crushers are back in the marketplace as soybean buyers, as the Brazil export premiums are rising. The U.S. dollar last week broke again after posting its worst week in a decade. The dollar has been pressured by the outflow of capital from the U.S. amid the extreme volatility in the stock market. Dow traded either side of unchanged last Friday. That was one of the only days last week that there was a very narrow window of where we were going to trade. The Trump administration paused the U.S.-China trade war, or the trade war in general, not on China last week. That led to some, expectation or optimism that maybe the U.S.-China trade war gets paused as well. Now, was it new money coming into the Board of Trade grain space last week? Probably not. Open interest was constantly on the decline pretty much all week long. If new hedge or index fund money was being invested in the grain markets, the open interest would have gone up. So this argues that what happened last week was short covering, not just new buying. So maybe the market got shorted ahead of the tariffs and people were trying to book some of that profit to the downside. Brokers estimate that managed money purchased about 7,400 contracts of corn on Friday, 6,300 contracts of wheat, 5,100 contracts of soybeans. I'm Ryan Martin.
And thanks, Ryan. Today's market's brought to you by Seed Consultants. Simply better performance online at seedconsultants.com. Overnight at the open, May corn $4.88.5 down a penny and 3/4. December new crop down 1 3/4 at $4.61 3/4. The May beans are at $10.39. That's down 3 3/4. While November's down a penny and 1/4 at $10.24.5. The July wheat down 5 3/4 at $5.64.5. September down 5 3/4 at $5.78 1/4. If you want to carry that July wheat to December, it's $6 1/4 down 5 1/2. In livestock, April cattle $202.47, up $1.62. June up $1.60 at $196.80. April lean hogs closed down 57 at 85.42. May, though, was up 7 cents at 86.57. May feeder cattle, $278.70, up $3.40. The August up $3.75 at $283.67. September also on the plus side by $3.75 at $283.22. Thanks for joining us. This is the Ohio AgNet.